Good afternoon and welcome to a special Board of Public Works and Safety meeting for Monday, December the 29th, 2014. In lieu of a roll call, we will introduce ourselves, beginning on my far right.
Ed Bell.
Dan McMillan, Clerk Treasurer.
Craig Wiley, City Attorney.
Sandy Seward.
Thank you, board members. The purpose of this meeting today is to go through the police agreement and the FOP for 2015 through 2017. That will be the only business this afternoon. So we'll go ahead and get started. Jamie, it's good to see you as always. And what we did earlier was we didn't go through the entire agreement. We just went through with the fire department what the changes were.
Okay.
So if you could start on page 1 and go through the changes, there should be marked board for your reference, and
Yeah,
we'll go
the
from
changes
there.
should be in red for the board members. Page 1, the only changes are the dates. So it's dated now through 2017 to make it a 3-year agreement. And the next change is pretty far into it, I believe. Page 14.
Okay,
Under Article 5, Section 1, uniform allowance, we're just asking that the city provide separate uniform allowance checks. I know that the fire department has this in their agreement. And every time we get our uniform allowance checks, I do have officers come up to me with questions about whether or not it's the right amount, because it is confusing to them because the uniform allowance is not supposed to be taxed. And so just about every time they have questions for me about whether or not it's being paid right.
I don't know about that one. It's $400, isn't it? It's $400, $400.
$400 twice a year.
Twice a year.
Okay.
But I agree with the mayor. This is an additional expense to the citizens of Beech Grove to have special checks made for each one of these. And we've always, or since I've been in office, I've always paid it actually ahead of time and on the same check. I would be happy to send a memo out as a reminder that states, that there's $400 in addition for a uniform allowance.
What was their issue? That they think it might be getting taxed or something?
Yeah.
Does it appear on their W-2?
It does.
But under
But it's not a
It's under a
taxable.
separate academy, yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll continue through that one. That's
Page 16. Under Section 7. And this is actually taken straight from the fire department's agreement, which has already been approved by the board. We had a conversation with the mayor, and the mayor asked that we include this in our agreement.
I agree. I just think any full-time employee, regardless of where they work at, if their injury or their impairment is caused by their employment, I think they should be protected. I don't know what the board, I just feel strongly
I
about
very
that.
much agree.
And that should all be the exact same language as what's in the fire agreement.
I don't want it to happen. We went through it with one of the firemen. It's just unpleasant. I mean, so I'm glad it's in here.
Okay, and underneath that, under Section 8, leave of absence, there's a added paragraph. This too was brought to our attention by the mayor, and he asked that we include it in the contract. Pretty much just pertains to military leave. Currently, we don't have any officers in the Guard or the Reserves, but that could change. Hopefully, we'll be hiring within the next year, and there's always a chance that you hire someone who's in the Guard or Reserve.
I'd have to defer to legal counsel, but the city passed an ordinance pursuant to this, and Craig was the one who looked at it, and so I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is just mirrors what USERA is. which is the Military Leave Act. Under the act, you can take, I think it's 5 years to protected leave to serve in the Guard or the Armed Services, but it's kind of like the FMLA where you can be gone for 5 years and you have to be restored to the same or similar position.
Right.
So if you were a sergeant, you'd be restored as a sergeant.
I do have one question. It says the city may compensate the employees for the duration of their military leave. Do they get both? I mean,
No,
obviously
that
they're
was
going to be paid.
That was the reason for the ordinance.
Okay.
Was because there was no clear direction on how the city should pay because, in most of those cases, the city shouldn't pay because the military,
Would pay-
whoever
right.
they're with, pays.
Correct.
So that was the purpose of that was.
And that's
one of the
why it
reasons
says
for-
may instead of shall.
Yeah.
May just allows them to if they want to, but they don't have to.
Okay.
Okay, next item would be page 19 on the top, section 13, staffing levels. And this also came straight from the mayor. This is what the city is offering to the department over the next 3 years.
I don't have a page 19 in
Oh,
mind.
boy.
Is this budgeted, the staffing levels for 15 and 17?
We've been told that per the city financial guru, Mr. Peters, that it is doable.
Okay.
Yeah, it's part of the new, when they, the city county council increased the public safety tax, that's going to allow us to do some more work. And the clerk and I met with the department heads and Jeff Peters and laid out a plan of how we would like to see the city progress public safety-wise over the next 3 years. And part of that was adding additional officers and replacing ones who retire. We have one who's going to retire this year,
Okay.
or next year, I'm sorry. So
Yeah, Captain
that's gonna
Stevens
be
is
incorporated.
retiring beginning of next year, end of this year. So we'll have one to replace him, and then by this schedule, we'll have 3 additional full-time sworn officers by 17.
Okay. Thank you.
On the bottom, under Article 6, Section 1, wages and salaries, this just reflects the salaries that have already been approved under the 2015 salary ordinance.
Okay, these are verbatim.
Yes.
It's just out of place.
Okay. So that's just reflects the salary ordinance that we approved earlier
Sure.
this year. Okay?
Continuing on to page 20 there at the top, this too came from the mayor. The city agrees to meet and confer with the FOP prior to recommending the salary ordinance for the members of the department for 16 and 17. Otherwise, the city agrees to a cost of living increase or 3% increase each year, whichever is greatest.
That is similar to the fire department.
That should be the same as the fire department. I think it might be, maybe two or three words might be different, but
I didn't think whichever is greatest was in there.
no, it's not.
No, my interpretation was that if I didn't sit down and talk to you about a raise, then you would be either at cost of living or 3%. If I didn't sit down and talk to you about it.
Right.
You know, I might sit down and talk to you about it and say, we can't do this. But as long as the city agrees to meet and confer, that's how I take that. And that's how I took it with the fire department.
Sure.
That doesn't mean
That's how I take it.
there would be a raise, that means you have to sit down and talk about it.
But if you don't talk about it, if you don't agree
Yes.
to, then we're covered,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, if I don't come and talk
Okay.
to you about it, then we would have to do a cost of living increase.
Okay.
So can we mirror what is in fire for this?
I don't know, I thought it was, isn't the fire department the same language?
No, I don't think they have whichever is greatest.
See, that's the option. We have the option there. Let's say like this year, we only gave 2%. This here would say that we would have to give them 3.
Yeah, if we didn't sit down and
Right.
talk to them. beforehand.
But I think just to strike whichever is greatest would accommodate what the fire department has.
Can you end the sentence at increase each year?
We could. The only problem I have with that is if the cost of living one year is 2%, then why would the city offer 3%? See what I mean?
Well, the cost of living this year, or for next year, was 1.4%.
Right. So for instance, if it was this year and the cost of living was 1.4%, what would the department get? The 1.4 or the 3?
The department would get whatever the full-time employees got. It would be, if it would be cost of living or if it would be 2%, it depends on what the city can afford to pay.
Okay, I'm just confused on why that 3% was in there.
I'm not sure why they put it in there.
Because if you have a 1.4 increase or cost of living, but it says or a 3%, who gets to decide who gets, you know what I mean?
Ultimately, would be the council, but
Okay,
they're
so
not
was
gonna,
that just,
they're not gonna give a 3% raise if they're being told financially they can't do it.
okay, so I'm still kind of confused why that's in there then. Because the
I
way
don't
I
know
read
why
it, the way I read it, is the city agrees to a cost of living or 3%. Well, that sounds like if it's less than 3, they're gonna give you 3.
I was, my thought would always be, and what it was this year, for next year would be cost of living adjustment.
Okay,
But we exceeded that, so, that's how I would approach it.
I have the fire wording if you need it.
What does it say?
City agrees to a cost of living or 3% increase each year of their current salary.
and when I hear that, I hear, well, at minimum, you're getting 3%.
Well, no,
Because there's no point in putting that 3%, that's arbitrary, but it's not,
the minimum would be cost of living, because the cost of living is not gonna be 3%.
so why is that 3% in there?
I
Explain
don't
that
know
to
why
me.
they put it,
Show a max. that
maximum
could be-
maybe?
The maximum that possible the city would be.
Well, I'll defer to the city attorney on this. I mean, if that wording, I think to a normal person, if they hear you're either getting cost of living or 3%, you're probably gonna get the minimum 3%. Am I,
Well, I mean, I think it's a matter, again, I think the council would have to decide that.
because that 3% is arbitrary. You could put in there 5% or 6% or 8%.
Sure.
I mean, if you're not gonna hold yourself to it, then why put it in there?
No, my desire would be at least cost of living,
Okay, then that's the way it should have been.
yeah.
Because when the fire department had 3%, that reads to me, you're getting at least 3%. Now, if the cost of living is 3.2, then you're gonna get
That
3.2.
doesn't, no, I don't look at it that way. I look at it like, I can come and talk to you about the salaries. If I don't, then I'm subject to
Subject to what?
these conditions, cost of living or a 3% increase.
Okay, well, I think if the city's not going to agree to a minimum of 3%, then that needs to be deleted. Because that sounds to me like the city's offering at least 3%.
I don't,
Because like I said, it's
I don't view
arbitrary.
it that
I
way.
could put 18% in there. But if you don't, you know what I mean?
yeah, I don't, I view it as.
Now, if you want to say a minimum of 3%, okay.
No, I would,
But there's no reason to put a figure in there if you're not going to, if it doesn't mean anything.
see, it says the city agrees to meet and confer the 416 or FOP prior to recommending salary ordinance for the members of the department to the common council for budget year 16 and 17. Otherwise, the city agrees to cost of living.
Or 3%.
Or
So what does that
3%.
or 3% mean?
But what happens if I meet with you and I tell you I can't do this?
Then, that's what I'm saying. You probably need to take that 3% out.
So Jamie, after the city agrees to a cost of living COLA, you would delete everything from there on out?
You'd have to if the city's not going to agree to that 3% minimum.
I think that if you put the otherwise, if they're not
Yeah.
comes into play.
Oh, I understand where it comes into play. The problem is, when
Yeah.
you put that 3%, if there's no meaning behind it, why is it there? If the city's not going to agree to at least a 3% minimum, then it should just be taken out.
Does that 3% not mean if the cost of living was like 1.7?
No, we've already discussed that, and they're telling us that it's cost of living.
Oh, because I thought it'd be 3% because it says whichever is greatest.
Well, that's what I just explained to them, but they're not.
Then the next paragraph, it talks about the above salaries are subject to the adoption of an annual salary resolution containing the same by the common council and are subject to the availability of adequate funds in each budget year, and an appropriation therefore as further set forth in Article 7. So my take on it is that when we look financially at what's going to happen, then I meet with you and say, it's our intent to give you cost of living adjustment, just like we did this year.
I'm sorry, I was,
How I project this plays out is we sit down and we talk about adjustment of pay next year, or in 16, and then we're going to know somewhere down the line what's going to be available to be given, and that's if it's, my goal was cost of living adjustments.
okay, well, that's
But I don't know
what should
what
have been
that
in the
is.
agreement.
It could be 2%, it could be 1.4. I
Okay,
don't
my
know.
only question then would be, where did the 3% come from? Because we were told to put that in there. That didn't come from the FOP.
The 3% may have come from how pension is calculated through the state saying that you can't get more than 3% raise. That's where that may have come from. I'm not sure, though.
Okay.
I think since we've been in office, 1.7 is the biggest increase they've had.
Yeah. So I'm not, I agree with the intent of this. I mean, that's not the issue, and it's our desire to give cost of living adjustments from here on out.
And that's what should have been in the agreement.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you take 3% out, or I don't know what you want to do with that.
My problem is now is if we take it out of ours, but the fire department keeps it in theirs, and it comes to a legal ruling, where are we going to be stuck at?
Well, wouldn't you agree that irregardless of what's in there, the full-time employees are gonna get the same
Yeah.
increase irregardless? So
So you're saying if the legal ruling comes down that says that according to the fire department's agreement, they get a 3% increase next year, you're telling me that every single city employee is going to get the same thing as the fire department?
No, I'm going to say that if we give cost of living adjustment, let's say like it's 1.9%, every full-time employee would.
No, I understand that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is their agreement states cost of living or 3% increase. Now, if they want to push it and they take it to a judge and say, look, our contract states cost of living or 3%, they're offering 1.9, we believe we deserve 3, and the judge agrees with them, where does that put the rest of the
Well, the
city?
judge is also going to rule on the availability of funds.
Well, the city might have 3% for the fire department, but 0 for us.
I don't know if that would happen.
Well, it would if you have a contract that's been signed by the city.
Yeah.
That's my problem right now. If they keep 3% in theirs,
I don't know.
Why'd you take out the whichever is greatest?
just take out whichever is greatest.
Take that out,
Okay.
period, and keep it the same as fire.
Right.
And what's your thought on that, Jamie?
On,
Taking that, striking whichever is greatest.
I'll agree to that.
And also, do we need, I mean, just if you're going to mimic what's on fire, then we also need to add the cost of living or 3% increase each year of their current salary.
Okay.
So do we need to put that in there of their current salary? And in lieu of the whichever is greatest.
I'll just change it to the fire wording.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, section 4, about middle of the way down, special duty pay. This is for our SWAT team. It's $250 annually for each person on the SWAT team. And as far as I know, the chief did budget $3,000 for next year's budget for this item.
Chief, is that accurate? I don't know.
That was put into that's what was arranged, that was what was agreed upon.
One question on that, just because it's spelled out in there, and I'm not opposed to that at all, I think it's great. My question would be, should there be a cap number? Like, in other words, 10 SWAT officers or 12 or whatever, just to make sure we stay underneath the 3,000 that was allotted. In other words, I don't want 30 officers, you see what I'm saying? All
Sure.
of a sudden join the SWAT team.
Well, I think at
That's-
this point, it has to be capped.
Okay.
Because there's only a certain amount of budgeted. If we would bring more officers onto the SWAT, they wouldn't get that because it's not a budgeted amount. Just that amount. That amount of money is all that couldn't pay anymore until maybe the next year.
How many are there?
Oh my God.
Currently, there are 11. We've budgeted for 12, which for us is a full SWAT team. We've never been over 12.
Okay, very briefly, Jamie, what's the special response team? Is that like, what do they do?
Our special response team is called out for high-risk warrants. We deal with barricaded subjects until the Indianapolis SWAT team can arrive. We can also be used in disasters, anything where you might need a specialized unit.
So additional risk, obviously.
Yes, sir.
High risk, and if the road units need extra officers, that would be a team that called out first.
So are they getting special training to do this?
Yes, sir. We have monthly training for the SWAT team.
All right.
Okay.
Page 21, on the top, for the calculation of our overtime rate, we're just asking that the special duty pay be included for the SWAT guys.
Okay.
Columbus Day was added as a holiday by the city, and we've just added it to the contract. And then section 7, which is the post-employment health plan, is another item that was taken from the fire agreement, and the mayor came to us and discussed that with us, and he added that we added to ours as well.
Okay. And page 22.
On page 22, section 8 is discussing PERF, which is the retirement fund for the police department. And we just added a sentence there at the bottom that the city agrees that a first-class patrol officer is actually a third-year first-class patrol officer.
And that was something we did by ordinance at the last council.
Right.
I think everybody's in agreement with that.
Yeah.
All right. Jamie, anything you want to add?
I don't think so, Chief.
I've got a question. On page 1, just the time frame. I know the fire department, I believe, was May of 2017, and you guys go up to December 31st, 2017.
Correct.
And the reason being is so that way we could take what we need for the budgeting process forward. In other words, their contract ends May of 2017.
Right, I noticed that.
And you guys, it goes through the end of the year. Well, the problem you get into is you can't budget anything for that next year because everything's already been done. So for budgeting purposes, it would be advantageous for you guys to bring it forward and say, this is what we need done.
Well, actually, we can open up the contract at any time and renegotiate, so that's not,
But the salary ordinance and everything else is already done
Sure.
for the next year. So, in other words, you would have to wait another year if you wanted something added in there, where if you ended in May, you could do it in May for the next coming year.
I see what you're saying, but like I said, we can sit down and negotiate at any time. So even though this goes through the end of December, if we go to the mayor and the mayor agrees to sit down, we can sit down and negotiate any part of this contract while it's still while it's still good. That's what I'm trying to say. So I can see your point, but we can still open it at any time.
Chief, you have any comments?
Just on Dan's question, I think the contract says we have to start negotiating in May of that year anyway. But the contract also says that if there isn't an agreement, this contract continues until there is, from year to year to year. So the date doesn't make a difference. It's just a date that's put in, but by the agreement, it says the FOP and the city will sit down, or the mayor, start negotiation in May. So it's a date that the contracts for the police have always ran through years and not half a year.
And down at the bottom, under section 3, renegotiating an agreement, it states it is understood and agreed by the parties hereto that any provision contained in the agreement may be amended at any time by the mutual agreement of the parties. So that says we can sit down at any time and renegotiate or amend.
All right. Cody, you have any comments?
No, sir.
Huh?
No, sir.
All right. Board members, any comments or questions?
Jamie, thanks for all your work on this. I'm sure you can read this backwards in your sleep. We pretty much agreed on most everything in here. Going back to page 14, which is the uniform allowance, we really didn't come to an agreement on that. So do we want to revisit that?
The clothing,
Yeah, the uniform allowance with the separate check.
How much does it cost to make 32 checks?
Well,
on the checks?
it's more than 32 because you got the fire department also. I don't know that exact answer right offhand, but that's twice a year. So for your department, it would be 64 checks for the year. I mean,
It's AccuPay that does it, and it's a piece of paper that comes out. It's, how much? $1?
I kind of see both ways. Personally, if it was me, I'd like to have that extra check because it's separated from my income. And I know that, okay, it's time that I can get a new uniform or whatever it is that you need.
But what
So-
happens if you're, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, and
I think the only problem was there was confusion among the officers whether or not it was being taxed. And it was confusing just looking at our check stub. The way it's printed by AccuPay, it doesn't really show that it's not taxed, if that makes any sense.
okay, so what would you like for it to say? $400 uniform allowance, non-taxable?
No, what we would like to have is a check.
Well-
Because some officers take the check, it's not, 99% of the officers are direct deposit. And they like to take that check and go to the bank, deposit it, go buy uniforms, shoes, whatever they need, and they're not taken out of their budgeted account. Maybe the wife sees a $400 coming out, and it makes more of a dispute in the household. We don't want a dispute there, especially around Christmas time. I think the ease of the officer's mind that check comes to them, and they can take that for the uniform allowance. That's just Peace of mind is what we're looking for.
If we keep this in, will we have to revisit for the fire then?
Fire's done.
It's in the fire
It's
agreement.
it's indifferent to me. I mean, it's
I
not a,
mean, yeah, it's been, every year since we've been in office, it's, irregardless of what this says, it's been given on the paychecks. And I try to help the officers and firefighters out, get it out. A lot of times they're paid before it's actually even due, so they'll know they'll get it. I get it out before Thanksgiving, so if they need it for the holidays, whatever. But I think, to me, it's just an added expense to the taxpayer that I don't think they really need. If someone throws $400 extra in my paycheck, I don't care what it's for. I appreciate it.
I do know on my check, I've had it for $3.99 before. It's $1. It's not a big deal, but you don't see the confusion. Jamie questions, I will, why are they doing it this way? Are they not taxing me? You don't know when they're taxed until the end of February. When the W-2s come out, there's 3 months of confusion, frustration. I think it would solve a lot of confusion and frustration. Peace of mind, especially at the end of the year, Christmas time. I don't know how much.
I totally understand. It's like your uniform money gets thrown in with the grocery money and the bill money. I mean, I do understand that. But from Dan, from your standpoint, make it easier. I mean, we want to, I see both ends. I really do. But Dan, can you send out a memo?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to send a memo out. I can have AccuPay change the line sheet that this was for uniform allowance and was non-taxable.
But how many people actually look at their check stub every single?
At the police department?
I know, I don't.
A lot.
It's,
Yeah,
every time we get a uniform allowance, are they taking out money? How do you know? It's,
If we could just get something to alleviate that concern, that's all we're asking for. And if there's any way that AccuPay could show it, like I said, on that pay stub, that this money was put into your pay, but it wasn't taxed. Because all they do, you all get the same pay stubs that we do. On the right-hand side, it just says what was taken out for taxes. Well, how do we know that wasn't, part of that taxes didn't come out of that 400?
And if you can make that happen for them, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Maybe both
Yeah.
parties would
And
have.
we can send an email or, a notice to the police and fire and state, your $400 uniform allowance will be on this check. And
Yeah, that'd be
And then
great.
I can actually have them make a notation on there, $400 uniform allowance, non-taxable.
So you're gonna get two notifications. You're gonna get an email as well as it'll be on the.
On the check.
So,
Okay,
is that okay?
sure.
All right, good deal.
all right. Board members, any other questions or comments?
I have none.
No, I think that clears it up.
All right, if not, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agreement between the City of Beech Grove and the City of Beech Grove Police Department and the Fraternal Order of Police.
I'll make said motion.
And I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I also vote aye and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Can you supply us a new page 20?
I can actually supply you with a whole new, I think there's a couple different changes I need to make. I need to remove wording on page 14. Yeah, I need to remove wording on 14. And was it page 20?
Could you
And page
supply
20.
a complete new one for me, because I had to,
you're gonna have to have.
I'd give the mayor mine because he didn't get one
Sure.
copy, so, I'm sorry. And I'm missing, 19 and so forth, so,
Okay. And the chief made a good point. This does have to go back to the membership now. Since there were
Okay.
amendments made to it, we do have to have that approved by the membership.
Okay.
And then once they approve it, I will present it back to you guys for signature.
All right.
Jamie.
Thanks,
Okay?
Jamie.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You
Thank
got
you.
it. That is the only order of business. Comments from board members?
I have none. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
If not, I'll ask for a motion to